Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I have a question for you. What do they say that every successful relationship needs? Clue. That's right. Communication. You need to learn to communicate. But what we'll come to find out later in the show is that there is a third person in every relationship that does have something to do with this, but in a very modern way. Relationships and marriage in the traditional Kenyan context is defined as a rite of passage that every individual is expected to undergo in his or her lifetime. And the integral purpose of this institution is to widen the kinship network of the individual through procreation. Lately, relationships and marriages have been in shambles, with a growing number of divorce cases seeking to end the sour marriages. In February of this year alone, 149 cases were filed, court documents show. In January, about 95 people petitioned the court to dissolve their marriages. The numbers keep rising. Last year, when the register was closed on December 31st, some 1,108 people had filed petitions to dissolve their unions. In December of 2017, that number was only 909. This morning, we want to sink our teeth a little bit deeper into this conversation. How have relationships shifted in the past? Did traditional marriages and relationships last longer? Were people happier back then than they are today in modern day relationships? I don't know, but let's get talking. All right, so we are at the beautiful Palette Cafe, and I've got two ladies with me who will dive deep into this conversation about relationships and where they stand today. I've got with me Nancy Kabiru, who is a psychologist and a clinical hypnotherapist. I have to say, before the camera started rolling, I was like, so you can hypnotize me now? What does that mean? And she was like trying to like debunk all these myths I have. And then we've got a final year student with us. Her name is Ya Ajak Deng. She's studying media, but she's also a content creator. All right, ladies, are you ready to dive into relationships 101 in the 21st century? So I guess my first question to the both of you would be, what are some of the obvious shifts that you've witnessed when it comes to relationships and how we interact with our partners today compared to, say, 50 years ago? What are some of the things that strike you as, funny that we used to do that, but now if you said it openly, people would kind of side-eye you, like, really? So what are those for you?
For me, basically, there's an age shift. People are settling in much older than they were, say, 50 years ago, because they would maybe get married when they were in their teen years, but currently in their late 30s, that is when people are deciding to settle. And then the structure, the whole setting around relationships, what it means to every individual is a bit different than what it was in the past, in the sense that some people get into relationship for obvious reasons: the looks, the wallets, the background the person comes from, the education level. But in those early years, the only thing that mattered is the family you come from and the person you are. That was all.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. What about you?
Yeah, I would say, well, maybe 50 years down the line, I was not there. But I would say of my parents, you know, coming from a country like South Sudan, and I come from a very polygamous family.
Yeah, you come from South Sudan, right?
I'm a South Sudanese by nationality, and also come from a polygamous family. So you see, like the shift, if I look at it in terms of how people relate, you know, just like Nancy said here, you know, there's been a shift, like what you look at when you're moving in with your partner. So there's been a lot of changes, and looking at it, that traditional relationships, I would say they last longer than what we have nowadays. I don't know if I would say, is it that we don't have patience or we don't take time to know our partners, something like that, because I feel like traditionally, like our parents will stay for longer together than we are these days. You just move from relationship A to B to C, you know. It's like each year or each other day there is a new relationship that you are in. Oh wow, interesting. So you said something earlier, Nancy, that, you know, back then you kind of just looked at what family do you come from. Now, and the things that you listed, I think it was looks, wallet, education, which, as far as I know, those are like the least of your worries if you're thinking of long-term partnerships, how someone looks and
how much money they have, because all those things shift. So do you think that that is part of what contributes to the frivolity, or just how many cases of divorce are taking place? Is it because that's what we're going after?
Yeah, that is a contributor in one aspect, and in those early years, divorce was not tolerated. So you could be in a relationship, both of you are committed to the wellness of the children, but there's no intimacy, there's no passion, there's no communication. So we are not holding what are the key vital necessities of love to exist, which is love, intimacy, and compassion. All of them are bounded by communication. So you lack communication, you lack intimacy, you lack compassion. You're just bound to commitment because you have children.
And is that you're talking about now?
No,
in the past.
In the past, yes, in the past. So that's why divorces were not as common as they are now. Right now, we are in we live in a village, in a global village, where information is very at everybody's reach, you know, and we are more social than they were those days. We are more exposed than they were those days. So the minute you realize that your relationship was not grounded on love, commitment, intimacy, and passion, and maybe other factors had to come into play, then it does not have very solid grounds. So when that fades, say the money factor reduces, then you find someone saying, this is not my standard, it's not what I signed up for, and I'm leaving. But then in those old days, you would be condemned for even thinking about leaving.
So which one is better? And I mean, who's happier? Who, like, if you know, and I mean that both from a singular perspective, and from a community, a village perspective. Was it better back then when you would just stay whether or not you loved the person, they were kind to you? Which one do you think? And maybe I'll address this to you. And I'm curious to even hear what it's like with your friends and your girlfriends, as you're talking about relationships and your guy friends.
Okay, just to go back on the traditional relationship, you know, when traditionally when people were coming together, the man and the woman, there were certain values that were set. You know, for you to be married to a certain family, they used to do something called background researching, like to know the family, what kind of a family, if they're witchcraft, if they're good people, if they are bad people, you know, such things were done before you go into that family. And you find such things actually made the relationship, by the time you're going to that family, you know where you're going to. Unlike these days, you'll just meet, we are strangers, but before you will not take your time to dig down to know where I'm coming from. You know, it's just like we've met maybe at the school and we catch up, and you know, you're like, we know each other very well. So by the time you're getting there, you actually realize you don't know this person that you're getting into the relationship with, and so you find that it becomes really hard. And also relationships in the traditional way, it was a communal thing, like the wife was for the community, not only you and your man. You know, there was that involvement with the family members, with the external families. So when you're staying there, you're not just belonging to your man alone. The other family members will be there to see you as the woman of the community. And so it's totally different. Like these days, you just move in with your husband and your kids, and you're staying in your own family or with your boyfriend, and you know, so there's not that relationship with other people to get to know you as the person who is living with them. And looking at our relationship these days with my girlfriend, and you know, like we are in a modern, and there's a way that you say we are living in the modern relationship, and so this is how we want to do our things. We set our own rules, we live by what we believe, not what the society actually believes in.
And which one is better, though? I mean, I get both sides of the arguments, and even just hearing what you were saying about, like, you know, a couple in that union represented what the community was about, the spaces that you were in, and so they were more involved in also seeing you through your hard times. But I've also heard many women be like, if my in-laws come one more time between me, like, I am just done. So where is the sweet spot?
Both of them have advantages and disadvantages. If we look at the traditional context, the advantage was that the children grew up in a balanced home.
Right.
So they would know the mom, they would know the dad, and even if it was a polygamous family, they'd still have mutual respect for each and every other mother who is part of that family. The disadvantage was then violence and abuse was tolerated, you know.
Yeah.
So you'd be physically beaten, there were rape cases that were tolerated, and you couldn't get out of that. So the victim had to live with it. The society condoned it, and most of the time the woman was put down because they were told you needed to be humble. You're the one who provoked this situation. And in instances where a woman misadvised or advised the children not to take what she's going through, then she was looked at as a bad omen. And even the husband and the other wives would separate her from participating in the family events. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of traditional marriages as I look at them. Modern require that everybody to become self-aware. Okay?
Yeah.
Because the lack of self-awareness, the naivety leads to broken relationships within a very short time. Because you find people are grounded on material things. You want a certain class because your friend has a certain class. You want someone with a certain level of education because you're comparing yourself.
Right.
You want to get to a certain level, but you have not taken the time to work on yourself, to build on yourself, because a balanced relationship involves where every partner A and partner B can bring both to the table.
Right.
So
wholesome, that they both come to the table wholesome.
Yes, wholesome. Because the inability to do that leaves one feeling as a victim or one feeling as though they are being used in that relationship. So the lack of that is what makes people fall out of relationship. And we also have to understand, currently we are having same-sex relationships. What drives that same-sex relationships? You find people living together, female to female, male to male, and they are happy. Sometimes, what leads to that happening? What is the background of the person? You know, what are the experiences the person has gone through? You find people find it easy to invest in themselves, like makeup, their hair, their nail. The guys buy good shoes, good watches, but they will not take time to go for psychotherapy where they can be helped or equipped with skills to understand the other person and to know what to bring on the table.
Oh, yeah.
That is very vital.
Yeah. And actually I think, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but it's something like, marriage is the only contract that you sign that binds you for life, that doesn't require you doing any kind of you know, real research or taking time and analyzing and just understanding how best is this.
Yes.
You kind of just go by, I feel like I love him and this feels a certain way, but that's not what's going to make it last. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up in a polygamous family, and if that at all influences your perception of relationships today and how you would consider going into a relationship.
Actually, I would say there's the good side and the bad side of being in a polygamous family. And from an individual point of view, you know, there's the good side, of course, having many siblings and having a big family. Of course, it's always advantage to yourself. But if you look at it in terms of personal growth and how you relate to your parents, and also the relationship that you'll want with each other is so different, you know, because if you're in a polygamous family, that means you only have one father and maybe 10 other wives. And so you find the concentration is only with the mothers. You concentrate on your kids, but the dad is just there as somebody to, I would say, just there to supervise. But yeah, because now there is no relationship that you get to have with your father at an individual level. Unlike these days, you know, for me, growing up in a polygamous family, I will never really want to go to one. I'm just going for a monogamous family because I've seen the good side of it, which is being many and having a big family. But that's not it all. And you know, traditionally they were we didn't have a lot of stuff like education, health-wise, you know, like economically, like if is it possible to maintain a polygamous family? In this setup, it's not easy to maintain a polygamous family. Leave alone like maintaining your own family is hard. So if you get to have 2 or 3 other wives, it becomes more hard, and you wouldn't want to subject your kids to this kind of life that you've gone through. You've already experienced it. So for me, I'll say like being in a polygamous family, it makes me like have that negative thought. Like anytime I get to a relationship and somebody mentions something like I would want to have the second, I'm like, you know what?
You're like, forget it.
So you know, just go. I don't want this. You know, this is not the kind of life I want to get after going through it as a child and growing up.
Interesting. You know, there's a really world-renowned psychotherapist named Esther Perel, and she talks about how back in the day a monogamous relationship meant that you had one partner for life. Today you have one partner at a time. So you call yourself monogamous, but you had like 50 relationships over over a span of like 30 years or something.
Like one at a time.
One at a time, as opposed to how it was back then, which is like you found your partner, here you go, good luck.